We invite you to worship with Tabernacle Baptist Church. 5 services, multiple locations. Tabernacle, Maine, 1223 Laney Walker Boulevard, Augusta, Georgia, 7:15 a.m., 9:45 a.m., and 12:15 p.m. And Tabernacle West, 702 North Bel Air Road, Evans, Georgia, 9 a.m. and 11:15 a.m. Whether you're out on the green or swimming in the deep blue, take us with you. Download our Tab Impact app now for Tab Anywhere and watch us anytime, anywhere.
Do you grow tired of people questioning your belief? What about the constant questions about your faith? What's your explanation when asked, where do we go when we transition from this life? Most say heaven or hell. But how do you defend this, as no one has gone to either and returned back to tell about it? How do you even respond to these questions?
Come as you are.
Do you pretend and remain quiet to avoid conflict?
As you were.
Or do you stand and defend what you believe?
Yes, I want you to be.
Prepare to have your life changed as you are armed each week with the tools to become a defender of the gospel in this thought-provoking and sure to be talked about sermon series. Join Reverend Dr. Charles E. Goodman Jr. for the fall sermon series, The Defenders. On Sundays, during our 7:15 a.m., 9:45 a.m., and 12:15 p.m. worship experiences at Tab Maine, and 9 a.m. and 11:15 a.m. worship experiences at Tab West.
Where it's all about God's people. TBC, making an impact. Where it's all about God's people. TBC, making an impact.
Welcome to the Kingdom Living Broadcast with the Reverend Dr. Charles E. Goodman.
Making an impact.
Welcome to the Kingdom Living Broadcast. I'm Reverend Dr. Charles E. Goodman Jr., the pastor of Tabernacle Baptist Church, one church in multiple locations. It is our pleasure to be able to have you with us viewing our broadcast on today. God has been doing some incredible things in our ministry, especially the word he's been sharing with us. And today we feel like God is going to bless you through the word he shared to his people at Tabernacle Baptist Church. Do me a favor, buckle up, get ready to receive what God has for you. Matter of fact, I'm so excited, I'm getting right into the word right now.
It was the 3rd year of King Jehoiakim's reign in Judah when King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon declared war on Jerusalem, besieged the city. Master handed King Jehoiakim of Judah over to him along with some of the furnishings from the temple of God. Nebuchadnezzar took king and furnishings to the country of Babylon, the ancient Shinar, and he put the furnishings in the sacred treasury. King told Ashpenaz, head of the palace staff, to get some Israelites from the royal family and nobility. Young men who were healthy and handsome, intelligent and well-educated, good prospects for leadership positions in the government, perfect specimens, and indoctrinate them in the Babylonian language and the Lord of magic and foretelling. The king then ordered that they be served from the same menu as the royal table, the best food, the finest wine. After 3 years of the training, they would be given positions in the king's court. 4 young men from Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, were among those selected. Head of the palace staff gave them Babylonian names. Daniel was named Belshazzar, Hananiah was named Shadrach, Mishael was named Meshach, and Azariah was named Abednego. But Daniel determined that he would not defile himself by eating the king's food or drinking his wine, so he asked the head of the palace staff to exempt him from the royal diet. Head of the palace staff, by God's grace, liked Daniel, but he warned him, I'm afraid of what my master the king will do. He's the one who is assigned this diet, and if he sees that you're not as healthy as the rest, he'll have my head. But Daniel appealed to a steward who had been assigned to the head of the palace, said to be in charge of Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Try us out for 10 days on a simple diet of vegetables and water. They compare us with the young men who eat from the royal menu. Make your decision on the basis of what you see. The steward agreed to do it and fed them vegetables and water for 10 days, and at the end of the 10 days, they looked better and more robust than all the others who had been eating from the royal menu. So the steward continued to exempt them from the royal menu of food and drink and served them only vegetables. God gave these 4 young men knowledge and skill in both books and life. In addition, Daniel was gifted in understanding all sorts of visions and dreams at the end of the time set by the king of their training. The head of the royal staff brought them to Nebuchadnezzar. And when the king interviewed them, he found them far superior to all the other young men. None were a match for Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they took their place in the king's service. Whenever the king consulted them on anything, on books or on life, he found them 10 times better off than all the magicians and enchanters in his kingdom put together. Daniel continued in the king's service until the first year in the reign of King Cyrus. Look at verse 8 through 10. But Daniel determined that he would not defile himself by eating the king's food or drinking his wine. So he asked the head of the palace, said to exempt him from the royal diet. The head of the palace staff, by God's grace, liked Daniel, but he warned him, I'm afraid of what my master the king will do. He's the one who's assigned this diet. And if he sees that you're not as healthy as the rest, he'll have my head. For time was ours as we start this series together, I want to preach from this thought today. I want to talk about don't compromise. Touch your neighbor, say, neighbor, whatever you do, don't compromise. Lift those hands toward heaven, say, Lord, speak. We need to hear. We may be seated in the presence of our God. Stories told of a father and family who had their own high standards of what they wanted their children to be able to watch. And one day, a popular movie was out, and his 3 teenagers decided they wanted to see this movie. Decided to go ask some of their friends, and they decided to interview them, get some pros and cons about the particular movie. They decided to write a list together and put this list and offer it to their father and let their father know what they were thinking. That, yes, I know it has a few little instances in it that perhaps stretch our standard as a family, but overall, it's a great movie. It should be something that we should go see. They brought their list to their father, and he said, in 24 hours, I will give you my answer. The next evening, the father summons the children into the room, the 3 teenagers in the kitchen, and on the table was a nice, freshly baked batch of brownies. He says, listen, I've created this for you. I know what you brought me about the movie. I want to just share this with you. If you guys would eat these brownies tonight, just one brownie, then I made my decision that y'all can go see the movie. But let me tell you some pros and cons about these brownies. They're made with the finest of chocolate. Matter of fact, it's an award-winning recipe. I mean, they are moist, they are fresh, just got them out of the onion. The only con is I put a little bit of horse manure in it. Not that much, it's just a small little bit. Matter of fact, probably is already disseminated within the 350 degrees for which it was cooked. It's not much, you probably won't even taste it in the midst of all that good chocolate and all that moistness and freshness of this brownie. You probably won't even know that it's in there. And if any one of you will eat this brownie, then surely I will let you go see the movie you want to go see. As you can understand, these teenagers did not eat the brownies, and they understood what the father was trying to say. Just because it may seem like everything's cool, a little bit can spoil the batch. I wonder how many times as we look over life have we made those same decisions. Let's be honest, in our aim to be successful, we finally make a decision, we finally get the promotion we wanted, only to find out we're being pushed in a way that kind of makes us feel uncomfortable. Here you are, you finally have got the friends that you were just thinking, I finally am sitting at the cool table with the cool kids, and now they're asking you to do some things that don't make you feel real comfortable, and you're having to make a decision. Do I want to stick in? Do I want to be the cool one? Am I going to make sure that everything is right, or am I going to stick to my guns? Am I going to have my stance? I mean, nobody really is going to know. I mean, who's going to be the wiser? Everybody else is doing it. Will it really make a difference? And my brothers and sisters, let's be honest, all of us face them every single day on your job and school and different things. And if we're not careful, we'll sell our soul for just a little bit of horse manure in some brownies. And what happens with that is that you don't think it's a big thing, but it does a long thing when it comes to how we view our God. Because at the end of the day, there will be worldly standards, but there are God's standards. And here is the reality. Whose standard are you going to adhere to? I know that it's easy, and I know it seems like those who often cheat and steal oftentimes are the ones who get promoted. I know it don't seem like it's fair, but here's the reality. Whose report are you going to believe? As we get into the book of Daniel, that's what we're going to see. We're going to see a man that literally came into Babylonian captivity as a teenager. But here is the powerful thing about it, is that God uses him as a faithful witness to show that even in ungodly moments, when you're pushed to periods where people want you to not be who you're called to be, I'm here to tell you that Daniel shows us you can stay faithful and prosper at the same time. God can use you when you maintain your standards, and you won't miss out on anything. You can still get prominence, prestige, and prosperity, all because you chose to stick with God even when things got difficult. I wish I had somebody to help me on the first Sunday of this year, because I want to let you know we're all going to be tempted from time to time. But Daniel teaches us one of the powerful things we must maintain is that even when other people have no standard, we still have a standard from God. Let me tell you something, my brothers and sisters. I know in this day and age, it seems like we watered down Christianity. It seems that as if we're making up our own rules. Every time I seem to read and open up the newspaper, watch and peruse social media, or even look online, it seems like the lines keep getting withdrawn. And here to tell you the truth, my brothers and sisters, yes, God operates with grace, and I'm grateful for the grace of God, but grace is not a get-out-of-standard-free card. What it simply says is that when I seem to falter and don't do what I'm supposed to do, it is when grace picks me up. But God doesn't want you just to use grace as some cheap excuse to do what you want to do, but God wants grace to be the reason why I decide to color within the lines. Look at somebody and tell them, this year I'm not going to compromise. And when we begin to understand what that looks like, we can operate in the godly positions God has for us to be. That's what I want to share today, my brothers and sisters. This text in chapter 1, and as I said, the breakdown of Daniel happens in about two forms. Chapters 1 through 6 gives the story of Daniel, the life of Daniel. It gives some amazing narratives. We're going to talk about Daniel, not just here as we see what is called the Daniel fast, but we also notice how his three friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, you know them, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, how they survived the fiery furnace. You know Daniel's story, how he was able to live in a lion's den. And so the first part of Daniel deals with the story of Daniel. But the last part of Daniel, chapter 7 through 12, deals with what is considered the revelations of Daniel, the apocalyptic language of Daniel. Daniel, in essence, is the revelations of Old Testament. It shares with us the coming of the Messiah. We see things in Daniel that does not come to pass until the New Testament. And so Daniel is given a whole lot to us. But yet when we look at Daniel chapter 1, I think it's powerful because in this passage it gives us the history. It gives us the foundation. If Daniel does not survive the test of chapter 1, there's no fiery furnace to survive. There's no lion's den to live through. If he does not survive chapter 1, we won't be talking about Daniel. Because it is in chapter 1, he comes over to Babylon, displaced from his family. Captivity has now happened because of the wrongness of the people. King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon has now made King Jehoiakim a vassal king, and now they've taken the best and the brightest from Israel, and now they've taken them from Judah, and now have transposed them into Babylon. And in our text today, my brothers and sisters, Daniel and his three friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, they're now brought into the Babylonian place. They are now sitting amongst kings and royalties. And they have an opportunity, my brothers and sisters. They can either go all the way in. Here they are prisoners. They literally don't have lives of their own. But Daniel and his three friends decide we can't compromise. They got promotion. They on a good job. They're going to get a lot of benefits. They're going to assume a lot of prestige. I mean, they are literally in a dispossessed place, but yet they are still prospering, and yet they still make the decision, you can't give me no amount of money to turn against my God. And I want to look at that, my brothers and sisters, because I think it's powerful for us to notice. When you study the trajectory of this particular book, the prophecy goes from around 605 BC to when Daniel dies around 526 BC. It's interesting to note that Daniel comes as a teenager and he lives throughout the entire tenure of the Babylonian captivity. Daniel, in the span of these 6 or 12 chapters, he outlives about 4 kings of Babylon. He serves under 4 crazy monarchs and still prospers. I ought to talk to some government workers right now. Let me tell you something, my brothers and sisters. He went through shutdowns and shut-ups. I wish I had some help. But he still prospered. And one thing that he teaches us, if you don't get anything else out of what I learned, Daniel teaches us a valuable lesson that you can cooperate but not compromise. Let me say that again for the folk way in the back. You can cooperate, but not compromise. And in this text, Daniel teaches us how you navigate the nuances of being in ungodly environments and governments and people, but let God use you for his glory. Here, this is not the time to quit, ain't the time to start protesting. What it is a time to say, you know what, since I'm in the system, let me work the system to make the system better for those who are coming behind me. Here, he teaches us a powerful principle that what he shows us is that when you trust in God, God got you wherever you may be. That's it, my brothers and sisters. That's a simple premise I want to give you. This ain't a long one today. I just have some things that I see in this passage because the way it sets up is so powerful to me. Because once again, he goes over to Babylon as teenagers. His three friends come in, and you'll note this whole trajectory from verses 1 to around verse 7 talks about what's happening. This is how they indoctrinate you. They get the best and the brightest, and what they decide to do is we're going to educate you in our system. We're going to feed you our food, and after a while, you're going to think like us, you're going to look like us, and you're going to think you're us. But Daniel and his friends decide that even though we're in the system, we're going to work the system because we're never going to lose who we are. Let me give you these three things, my brothers and sisters. This is real small, just an introductory sermon. But the first thing that these four youngsters teach us is that when we don't compromise, the first thing you got to make sure you do is you got to know your identity. Here's what's crazy when you read this text. When you read the text around verses 8 through 10, when you read this text, verses 6 through 7, what you note is where they come from. They are people who have been enslaved. These are enslaved individuals who've now been displaced into what is considered empire of that time. If you read biblical history, Babylon was an incredibly amazing empire. Matter of fact, God used Babylon to chastise and judge the children of God. And the reason they're in this predicament is because they had lost their respect and prominence for who God was. And God, whenever you read scriptures, is very clear. I will use anyone and anything to get you back in right order. And because they had decided that they didn't need God, the children of God found themselves in this peculiar situation. Daniel is a contemporary of Jeremiah and others who have been foretelling what was happening. Daniel and his friends are part of the first group of people to be displaced from their home. They are from the tribe of Judah, but now they are the best, the brightest, and they're now at Babylon. Here's what's crazy. First thing they do is try to indoctrinate them, but guess what they try to do? They change their names. Daniel gets the name Belshazzar. You really thought that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego was their real names, right? Those are those Babylonian names. Their real names was Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, names, when you study them, meant either Elohim is my judge, Yahweh is gracious, I am who Elohim is, and God is able. Those four teenagers had those four names that reminded them of the faithfulness of God. So what did the Babylonians want to do? Let's change their name. We don't want them thinking that their God is still in control. So Daniel, you're Belshazzar. Hananiah, you got another name, Shadrach. Mishael, your name is Abednego, or Azariah, your name is Abednego. And so they began to give them their own names. But here's what's crazy, my brothers and sisters. What I appreciate about this is that Daniel was astute enough to know on the job, y'all call me Belshazzar. But I still know I'm Daniel. Matter of fact, the name of the book is not Belshazzar, it's Daniel. Daniel means Elohim is my judge. It literally means what Daniel says, in spite of where he was, and they tried everything to strip him of his identity, he said, you can call me what you want. When you know who you are, I wish I had some time. You're not tripping because what? You can call you what you want. It's who I know I am that really matters. Can I help you? Because I'm talking to some people that you had to live in that duplicitous environment. You feel what W.E. Du Bois calls the double consciousness, that in some places I got to be this, but I got to understand at home I got to be this. And how do you navigate it? Because some of us can't. We get schizophrenic. We don't understand. But let me tell you why I believe Daniel could handle being called Belshazzar at the office, but remaining being Daniel, is because when you know who your God is, oh, I wish I had some time. When you know who God has called you to be, when you understand that sometimes you got to play the game to get ahead, but yet you understand I'm not going to lose who God has made me to be. Do I got any Daniels in the house that said, I keep my name? Can I tell you why I believe he kept his name? Remember, him and his 3 friends were from the tribe of Judah. Judah is the tribe of praise. You do know that, my brothers and sisters, which means they had an intimate relationship with God, which means when you are a true worshiper of God, you never lose your identity, which means, okay, so I got to act this way or talk this way when I'm over there, but just believe I'm still Daniel on the inside, and there's nothing you can do can strip me of my ingenuity, and nothing you can do can strip me of my identity. Why? Because when I have who God has called me to be, I maintain my character even in tough situations. As a kid, there were certain movies that got me. One of the movies that riveted my soul when I was a kid was a movie called Roots. It was autobiography of Alex Haley, and it came on TV when I was a kid. It was a mini-series. And there's one part that gets me, y'all. There's one part when the main character, Kunta Kinte, found himself at odds with slave owner. And they decided they were going to give him a name. They were going to call him Toby. But Kunta Kinte said, my name ain't Toby. My name Kunta Kinte. And in one of the most powerful scenes, guys, I ever seen in my life, man, bless their heart, they string him up on a rope. They brought out another slave to start whipping him. And a guy was behind him, white master, and he kept saying, what's your name, boy? And every time he got hit, Kunta Kinte. Your name, Toby. Kunta Kinte. It seemed as if the more they beat him, the more resolved he got in saying, listen, you can call me Toby, but I know what my name is. Can I tell you, life will do the same thing to you. Sometimes they'll try to whip you into submission to make you lose your identity. But what I appreciate about these individuals is they knew who they were. The reason you can't compromise is when you have a hard, earnest, steadfast belief in your own identity. I submit to you, they show us you don't compromise when you know your identity. Here's the second thing. You don't compromise when you can control your appetite. Here's what's crazy. Thing comes, the text says, that they were allowed the privilege of eating from the king's royal table. Now, let's set the stage. This is what the king ate. This was the most wonderful meats in all of the kingdom. It was overflowing. Just consider, it was endless entrees of meat and endless entrees of the most extravagant stuff, whatever you wanted to eat, lamb and all that stuff, and beef and chicken, and even on top of that, they had an unlimited open bar. Wine was flourishing, whatever type of wine you wanted to drink. This was always available at those they considered to be the top echelon. Anyone seeing that, especially if you're a slave that you just got from your home, you can imagine it pales, it just blows your mind in comparison for what they were eating before. See, in this new place, they were slaves, but now they were given an opportunity to dine at the king's table. And I can imagine, because the text doesn't tell us, there were many others who came with Daniel and his 3 friends. They're not the only ones that got displaced. But Daniel and his 3 friends make a decision. Hey, you know what? That food looks okay. It looks good. But that's not what we're going to eat. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to find a way to not acquiesce to eat what they're eating. There are many scholars who suggest one of the reasons they perhaps did that is because one of the things that God detests the most is that he hates eating foods, or us eating foods that have already been brought up for idols. What they would do in Babylon, they would take the choicest meats, the choicest of food, and they would offer it as a sacrifice to the gods. And whatever their god didn't want to eat, they would bring to the king to be his portion. So in essence, it wasn't just succulent food. It was food that had already been offered to the gods. So when Daniel and his three friends see it, they saw something more than just food. They saw something disrespectful to their God. So they say, listen, we can't do that. We need to figure out a way to do this, because by eating that food, we're telling God, you're not worthy to be worshiped. Here's the grace of God. Because when you decide to not compromise, God will give you favor with authority. Because there was a guy that chose them whose main role was to make sure they eat right. We don't know why it happened. We don't know how it happened. But the text in Daniel says that for some reason, Daniel and his friends found favor in his sight. Come here, Joseph. Joseph will testify. Sometimes if you just stay with God, God will give you favor with some unlikely people. He'll give you favor with a supervisor even though your boss can't stand you. I wish I had time. He'll give you favor with a teacher aide even when the faculty don't want to see you. He'll give you favor on stuff and give you connections you didn't even bank on. And because this person had favor with Daniel, he said, look, man, I hear you, but I really don't know if that'll work, because the diet we have for you is to make you your best. This is the choices of food, and what you're asking me to do may make you seem less. And Daniel says, this is all I'm asking. Let us just eat vegetables and water for 10 days. And after 10 days, check us versus the other guys. And after 10 days, if we look worse than them, we'll eat the food.
I know that word blessed you. It blessed our congregation. Listen, you can get that message absolutely free. God has really been blessing us, so we want to be a blessing to others. Matter of fact, go check us out on our tbcaugusta.org website, also Facebook Live, our YouTube channel. Every aspect, we want to make sure that you're getting all of these life-changing content that we know is going to bless your life. Listen, I'm signing off, but we conclude every worship experience at our church with this same thought. Because we've been blessed, we're going to be a blessing. See you next week.
Thank you for watching the Kingdom Living broadcast. If you were blessed by today's message, you may make your purchase online at onlinesales@tbcaugusta.org or call the church office at 706-724-1230. Tabernacle is one church in multiple locations. We welcome you to come and join us at Tabernacle, Maine, 1223 Laney Walker Boulevard for our 7:15 a.m., 9:45 a.m., and 12:15 p.m. worship services. Midweek services Thursday at 12 noon and 7 p.m. and for our Christian Discipleship Institute activities throughout the week. We also welcome you to join us for our 9 a.m. and 11:15 a.m. worship services at Tabernacle West and Christian Discipleship on Tuesdays at 6:30 p.m. at 702 North Bel Air Road in Evans, Georgia. And as we close every service at Tabernacle Baptist Church, because I've been blessed, I'm going to be a blessing.